Welcome back to Question Period. President-elect Donald Trump announced a flurry of administration nominations this week. They include Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, Kristi Noem as Secretary of Homeland Security, and Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence. What should we read into these early nominations, and what could they mean for Canada? Our Sunday strategy session is here to talk about that. Kathleen Monk is a former NDP strategist and Director of Communications to the late Jack Layton. Kory Teneycke was Ontario Premier Doug Ford's campaign manager and former Director of Communications for Prime Minister Stephen Harper. And Scott Reid is a CTV News political analyst as well as former Communications Director to Prime Minister Paul Martin. Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
Hi.
Kory, I'll start with you. What's your initial read, before we get into the Canadian context, on the picks so far? I should add to RFK Jr., now nominated for Secretary of Health as well.
One that had been anticipated, I think. But I think Trump is looking for people who support him and support his agenda. And if you're looking at, why I think so many of his cabinet secretaries were fired over the course of his first term of office, and you look at what their backgrounds were and the things they believed in and things they supported, the commonality between them all is they didn't really fundamentally support Trump or where he wanted to go with the country. And these appointments are there to implement the agenda of the elected president. And while I appreciate not everybody likes Donald Trump or agrees with his agenda, the majority of Americans do. And it's, I think, perfectly sensible that he's going to pick people who agree with him. I also don't think it's surprising that these people are not a part of the regular Washington establishment. Like, he's elected to be a rejection of that, and he's picking people who are outsiders, people who are critics, people who are part of a counter movement to some of the things that have been going on in Washington over the last number of decades. So I'm not surprised by them, and time will tell whether or not they're able to get confirmed. But I'm not surprised that these are his picks.
It's interesting, Scott, because the bulk of who he picked is exactly as Kory lays out, right? Particularly like the anti-establishment voices. But at the start, with the selection of Marco Rubio or Tom Homan, there was certainly a bit of, maybe there's going to be some, some neocon voices, some more traditional Republican voices in there, and then that very quickly changed. What message do you think Trump is sending with these picks?
These are my guys, and this is my agenda, and I'm unfiltered and unfettered. So, Kory can say, well, they're not conventional. No, they're not conventional, but it's far more extraordinary than that. There's not necessarily an assurance that some of these people are even basically competent, but that's what we're going to get. Donald Trump has emptied Arkham Asylum, right? With crazies, crackpots, criminals are now, all these Batman villains are in charge of the United States of America. That's just the flat truth of it, right? The biggest economy in the world, strongest military in the world, most influence over global affairs, certainly the most influence over Canada. And it's now run by this, collection of, the Riddler, the Joker, and Poison Ivy. I don't know how you engage with the Riddler, the Joker, and Poison Ivy, because they're not rational beings, and they will, conduct themselves, I think, unpredictably. But as astonishing as all that is, Kory's correct. It's not surprising. He told us he was going to do it, and he's done it.
Yeah, that's sort of why some of the implosion takes this week to both what Scott and Kory are saying were even more surprising to me, because I'm like, I don't know why anybody is surprised. It's not like he signaled anything different during campaign.
That's right. He promised that he was going to get revenge. He promised he was going to dismantle the deep state, and he promised he was going to put America first. And that's the lineup that he has put in cabinet. I think the challenge, though, Kory's trying to normalize these picks, but these are like Putin sympathizers in Tulsi Gabbard or vaccine deniers in Kennedy. Like, these are problematic individuals, and it's not enough just even to mock them, and say they're like the burglar, like Scott just did. These are dangerous people, and I think that the approach that our government has to do is quite one that's serious, because he is not only putting people who don't have experience into cabinet, basically to dismantle the very departments they're going to essentially lead. He's also elevating like a billionaire class, people like Elon Musk, to essentially own and reshape government and politics entirely. And the problem is that we are going to, certainly the progressives will probably focus on the fact that they're unqualified, they shouldn't be there, and it's a reality, TV cast of characters in cabinet. But what they should be focused on are the policies that these people are going to bring forward, and how they're actually not going to help working people. People like Elon Musk are not going in to help government and create more efficiency to help working people. He's in it to help himself to dismantle regulation so that he can make more money and get more money out of government contracts.
Why didn't that message work in the campaign? Just to follow up, I'll just quickly with Kathleen, and then I'll jump to you. Like, that message was repeated over and over and over again, and it did not resonate with the so-called working class who moved over to Trump by huge numbers. I
don't think that the Democrats got the message right. They called him a fascist. They called him a threat to democracy. They didn't say that, hey, you know what? We've got more work to do. We've tried to do a little bit with Biden. We're going to do more. We're going to make your lives more affordable. Frankly, Trump was better at delivering that message to working class people.
Kory, you want to jump in? Go ahead.
I just think the hypocrisy on that narrative is just so rank. You want to talk about the billionaire class? Like, look, the Harris campaign outraised like 3-1 from billionaires and others than Trump did. And, people point out Elon Musk. Okay, well, then if you're going to point out Elon Musk, then, let's talk about Goldman Sachs giving millions of dollars to the Clintons over the years, or the collection of billionaires that are supporters of the Democratic Party. Or if you want to talk about unqualified, the likes of Beyonce and Oprah, who are both billionaires, but, talk to me about their qualifications to run the government of the United States. It's just, they're in charge of no governments because the American people didn't elect the Democrats. But, to say that one party and Trump is somehow in the pocket of billionaires, I think what's more accurate to say is the moneyed establishment of the United States largely didn't support Trump. And what you see are more of the maverick class, more of the entrepreneurial class, more of the new money. Look, Elon Musk isn't a part of the American establishment. He's, somebody who immigrated to the country and is a self-made person, right? This is not an establishment figure. He's an insurgent figure and a reformist. And the American people voted overwhelmingly for change, and change is what they're going to get. And that's actually good for democracy. And if that change doesn't work out, guess what? The Republicans will be voted out of office. And, so we'll see what happens over the next 2 years. If things don't go well, I expect you'll see a massive push towards the Democrats in the midterm elections, which is often what happens when there's overreach in the United States. So I'm going to take a more wait and see approach to this, but I'm not going to get in join the bandwagon of hyperventilating about this stuff. I think it's overwrought.
Scott looks itching to respond. I'm not even going to pose a question to you. Go for it, Scott.
I mean, that's all well and fine. I'm not actually hyperventilating. I think I'm looking clear-eyed at the truth of it, which is that this is going to be a criminal kleptocracy of a administration, that it has no guardrails, and that's just the way it's going to conduct itself. And you know what? It is because he won the popular vote. He's got both houses of Congress, and he won the presidency. So that's life in the big city. The question for us as a country is, how can you engage with that? How do you possibly engage with such an unpredictable, irrational, sometimes incompetent bunch of folks across the table? It's going to be extraordinarily difficult. We know for sure it will mean that they will be guided solely by transactional self-interest. Does it literally mean that we're going to end up, if you want something out of this government, well, then you're going to have to actually send $1 million in a wire transfer to Switzerland? I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised a bit if we end up with stories like that. But how do we engage? How do we deal with, the looming 10% tariff that will for sure be announced across the board? We'll have to see. He's going to pit sector against sector. He's going to force us to pick the energy patch over agriculture and auto, or vice versa. It's going to be an extraordinarily difficult administration to deal with because there's no rhyme, reason, or rules.
If I could play devil's advocate for a second, is it all that different from a Canadian perspective than the first time around? I understand he has a more decisive mandate, but I very clearly remember going in February of maybe it was 2016 to the White House for that first visit,
Right.
and Jerry Butt's walking, next to Steve Bannon. Like, they made those overtures to people we now, in retrospect, look back at as unpredictable and unseemly, quote unquote, as others have been described. Like, they did it once. Is it possible to do it again?
I think we're in a completely different universe than we were in 2016. Completely different. Back then, Trudeau had a strong mandate. He was still the selfie prime minister. Everybody wanted pictures with him. Right now, he is a lame duck, right? And probably in the next 6 to 9 months, government will change hands. He has no mandate currently. So it's not enough to be just, dusting off our copies of The Art of the Deal and reinventing cabinet committees to go up against Trump and his cabinet again. There's a chance that actually Trudeau needs to prove to the Trump administration that he has a mandate even to engage with them. Because right now, most of Trump's cabinet, from Homan, from people like Mike Waltz, they've actually not just said nasty things about Trudeau himself. They've actually argued that they would like to see Pierre Poilievre as prime minister and basically encourage Canadians to vote for the other guy. So we're up against a different challenge than we were in 2016.
Fair point. I want to talk more about that, but I'm out of time, so I'll save it for next week's discussion. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you making the time this morning. Our Sunday Scrum, our Sunday strategy session. Pardon me, I'm getting ahead of myself. The Scrum is next. Kory, Teneycke, Scott Reid, and Kathleen Monk. As promised, the Scrum is next. After a quick break, we'll focus in on the domestic agenda as Parliament resumes for the last time before the new year. JD Belval's, Najoud Al-Maliz, and Steph Levitz are here next.